Item number 9, general items, expansion of the city's sphere of influence, SOI, southern boundary line from new development opportunities. Mr. Bush.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. This item is a familiar project for the City Council. It started back in October of 2013 when we conducted a joint workshop with the City Council and the Sutter County Board of Supervisors, where we discussed a variety of different things, but including the possible expansion of the city sphere of influence south of our current city limits. It was the purpose of that discussion was an opportunity to create new job opportunities, new economic growth for both Yuba City and for Sutter County. And at that particular meeting, both a group of elected officials endorsed the idea and directed our city and county staff to work together towards the next steps in that effort. This right here is just a quick map of our current city limits shown in red, and the green line represents our existing sphere of influence boundary line. Not showing up, but this right here is the Sutter County General Plan map that was presented to the special workshop. Now, as you can see, this line in red right here represents a line in their general plan that shows the possible expansion of our sphere of influence, and that was something that they included as kind of a first step effort towards new economic growth opportunities for Yuba City in Sutter County. So this is what we were working off of, was this particular map here, and the decision of how far to go, possibly expand our sphere line. This is just a blow-up detail of that, along with the county zoning land use shown underneath. Well, shortly after that meeting in October of last year, the city received a development proposal from the Newcomb Ranch Partnership Group, south of the city's current city limits and sphere of influence. They actually proposed to expand the boundary for approximately 210 acres, and that project would include a variety of different components to it. While its acreage is not one of the biggest projects we've worked on, it is certainly one of the most involved in terms of all the different types of entitlements and processes that we'd have to go through, which would include a boundary adjustment to the sphere of influence, pre-annexation, zoning and land use, LAFCO processing, master plan, environmental review, development agreement, and then also other steps involved with the county in terms of the master tax exchange agreement. Just as a reminder for the council, this is the new property here south of Bogue Road, and they're east of Highway 99. That brown portion is held by Newcomb Ranch LLC. That is other property owners that are interested in participating in the plan and the proposal. And then this area is the original proposal for the master plan area that the developer would propose as part of this effort. Now, real quickly on this particular map, as you can see, the area in red is the boundary that was established in the county's general plan for the possible expansion. And whether we choose to pursue annexation of just the brown, blue, or green, or all of them, or anything else outside of that, the processes remain the same in terms of going to the technical reviews for expanding our sphere, doing a municipal services review, and etc. And so what we asked the council when we presented this proposal to the council in March 18th of this year, we asked the council for direction to go forward and talk to all the property owners out there in that area to find out what their feeling was on whether or not they would like to be part of an expansion to the sphere of influence or not. So we solicited the help of MMS Strategies, who's here tonight to help us with that effort. They have a lot of experience working with people and those kinds of projects. And our effort was concluded in a workshop on August 11th where we were meeting at Berry School, elementary school. We had over 100 attendees, so it was very well attended and lots of good dialogue and discussion. That outreach effort also included a public vote, if you will, at the meeting, and I'll get into the results of that in just a moment. And then we followed up with every property owner. So we sent a variety of different correspondence, people that were at the workshop, people that weren't at the workshop, people that were not able to attend, so we can get as much results as we possibly could. And we got pretty good feedback, I think, because of all the people that were there. We got 83 property owners of the 100 plus. So we got about 44% response, including based on the number of property owners as well as the acreage represented there. Of those 81 property owners that provided responses, Over 41 of them, representing 467 acres, supported an expansion of the sphere of influence. 35 representing 104 acres did not support it. And then finally 7 property owners were undecided. This exhibit is in the report that MMS prepared for the council, which has been included in your packet. The green color, and hopefully you can see this okay, and I have a copy back here as well for clarity's sake. The green colors represent property owners that were interested in the sphere of influence expansion. The red represents property owners that were not interested, and then the yellow finally represents properties that were undecided. Now, at that meeting, we took a lot of questions, and we tried to give as much feedback as we could. And we had talked about the possibility of coming back for a second meeting, but based on the strong feedback and the recommendations, we felt that we're coming to you tonight with a recommendation to draw the sphere of influence line at Stewart Road based on this. And as you can see, if you draw the line at this point here, overwhelmingly majority is in favor of that annexation. So what we're proposing for you tonight is just the consideration for us to go forward. As I mentioned, the first step in this process was the county including in their general plan the possible boundary limit for the expansion. And so tonight what we're asking you is to give us direction or authorization to move forward so that we can start processing all those other technical documents. This right here represents the proposed recommended line. So here's Highway 99, here's Bogue Road, and what we're suggesting based on the property owner feedback is that the sphere of influence boundary be proposed along Stewart Road at this point here. So, next steps, we have a lot of them, and we've been talking with a lot of different folks about getting this project underway. The next steps will be after your action tonight, we'll be finalizing the selection of a project consultant. We're currently evaluating those proposals. We've invited the county to participate in that, and we're looking to finalize that and bring that back to council here next month. We'll also at the same time bring a cost recovery and reimbursement agreement so the council's familiar with that. And then we'll start all the kickoff meetings that are needed for this with all the affected stakeholders. So we'll be meeting with other agencies such as Caltrans and air districts and so forth, but we'll also be working with the property owners to get their feedback on land use and those types of things, as well as the county and LAFCO. And I pointed out in the staff report that the county has shared with us some of their preliminary concerns that we need to address, and we're fully aware of those, and we're looking forward to meeting with them and all the other affected stakeholders so that we can make sure that we address all these issues and bring back a quality project for the city council and the other agencies to approve. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Aaron?
We have a public hearing.
Yeah, we do.
I'll wait till after the public hearing.
Okay. We do have John Teague who wishes to speak on this item. John, if you can go to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is John Teague. I'm a property owner. I was involved in the sphere of influence, under the undertaking that Aaron was talking about. In the sphere of influence, we were asked, I'll lose my notes here, going everywhere, excuse me. The sphere of influence, I think the general consent of everybody there was that they didn't want the city to move in. I myself, I'm neutral. I said that at the meeting. But one thing did come out at the meeting was that there was a lot of questions. A lot of questions about what are the costs, what are the impacts, city water, city sewer, what are the costs, road widening, curb gutter, those types of things. Police, fire, other issues, people were concerned about the cost. We'd asked about those, we didn't get any response. We got told that we'd get answers to those later. So I got a follow-up email. I chose not to vote, by the way, in this participation because I said, I don't have enough information to base a decision. I said, I need some information before I can give a good decision. So I didn't get that information. So I got a follow-up email about a few weeks later. And again, I expressed my concerns in my email. And I said, tell us what the costs are going to be. Tell us what the impacts are going to be. I said, that never happened. And I was sent a follow-up email, and I was told that from Smira here, is one of the consultants, said that she would respond back to me in a week, and after she talked to the city. That never happened. So I decided, well, I get another email or letter, and within that, it says there's going to be a council meeting tonight to talk about the vote. And I think one thing that's interesting in this vote was, if you look at the original vote was not so much for this. So they moved the county line or the sphere of influence line so that it was more positive. But, okay. So I decided to come to the meeting tonight to find out the rest of the story. And in preparing for this meeting tonight, I happened to check my, get online, City Council, looked at the agenda, and I read the report that the council apparently has. And it's the attachment for, number 9. And it's from Aaron Bush. And in the report, it says that at the August 11th meeting, which I attended, it says the levels of service and costs were discussed at the meeting. They were discussed, but they were never answered. It says the proposed Newcomb Ranch project overview was discussed. And I thought, well, what's the proposed Newcomb Ranch project? That was never discussed. I went across the street, I talked to my neighbor in the morning, I said, because she was there, I said, do you remember anything about the Newcomb Ranch? No. Nothing about the Newcomb Ranch. So I read further, and I'm trying to find out, well, what's going on with the Newcomb Ranch deal? And I find out that it's a 160-acre development or more houses right next door to mine. And, I'm still neutral on that, but what I don't think is right is that information was never brought to the people in the sphere of influence. It was never brought to the table to discuss, and to this day, I don't even know what's going to be right next door or across the street from me. Government is supposed to be about transparency. This isn't transparent at all. And so I would suggest that answer the people's questions. Go back, read the records, give them responses, give them at least an estimate about the cost, and be very forthcoming about what is the proposed Newcomb Ranch development project of 160 acres that all these people are living right next to. What is it? Be transparent. That's what I'm asking.
Thank you, John. Aaron, I think that you want to. I definitely don't want to, have this into a two-way discussion, but I think John does bring up some great points. One of the things that we, obviously, from the government standpoint of view, is definitely be transparent. And I think hearing back some of the feedback from some of the people that were there, that a lot of the questions were not answered, and we'll get back to you. And I think originally when we went out to take a look at that, we also looked at just trying to see, okay, if at one point in time we want to look at the expansion of the city, let's take a look at going possibly down to Berry Road and not having it up at, at the Stewart Road area. And I think that's why it came back to the Stewart Road. I think the people below Stewart Road didn't want anything to do with possibility of annexation at one point in time with the city. Most of the property owners at that point wanted to do. But I think as John is a property owner as well, and he brings up some very valid points, is his questions along with others probably needs to be answered as well as what is the cost, and were those questions answered at any point in time after the meeting at all?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are valid questions, and we did say so at the outreach meeting as well. The challenge is, as we shared at that meeting, is we don't know the final cost. We have ballparks of what an average single-family home connecting to water and sewer services would be. But as far as what those costs would be when you actually start getting into project by project, we haven't even started with the project yet. And so I totally respect the idea of sharing that information, but I don't have it until we start these studies. And that's something that we tried to convey at that outreach meeting, that until we start planning for what this area will look like, we don't know those numbers, because it's going to vary based on a case-by-case project. What kind of infrastructure is necessary to get there? Where is it coming from? How big is it going to be, etc. So we won't have that until we get into this process. As far as the comments about the Newcomb Ranch project, we did talk about, again, in generalities, because all we're talking about right now is just the the opportunity to go talk and go through the process of expanding the possible sphere of influence line. No policy decisions, no formal action, no official action is being taken. This is simply to start an application process that is going to have many, many public meetings, many outreach efforts to process this application. The Newcomb Ranch project, as I pointed out earlier, was submitted as this property here. That's as much as I know about it. It's mixed use, residential and commercial. We haven't gotten anywhere near the details of what it's going to be next in terms of how many homes, the density. Again, we're working with the county general plan land use designation right now, which is shown here. So you have low density residential, you have ranchettes, and you have Ag 20 land use designation. So we're starting brand new fresh on this as we go forward. And all throughout this process, we'll be reaching out to all the property owners and all the affected agencies to talk about what is happening with this project. We'll be identifying infrastructure and associated costs with that. And so then, along at appropriate points of that process, we'll be bringing that back to council and giving you opportunities to direct us yay or nay and have public input as to whether or not that's appropriate there, or what is the cost and those kinds of factors. So I appreciate the comments about wanting to know answers. I do too, and we want to give those to folks, but we want to give them the right answers after we do the studies.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Aaron, I think I was at that meeting down at Berry School, and I think some of the frustration that the property owners had was about the cost. And I think we need to make it clear is, first of all, the county has adopted this sphere of influence. This is not something that the city went out and said, we want to expand our city to this. This was in the county's general plan when they updated it recently. But secondly is that if this was adopted as a sphere of influence, correct me if I'm wrong here, this would not affect the current property owners one bit as far as increase in taxes or anything like that. This only would affect new development, and new development would be paying these costs that we're talking about for sewer and water and that type of thing. And existing property owners wouldn't have to hook up to that if they didn't want to. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I went back to this picture here real quick. Again, the green line represents our existing sphere of influence. The red line represents the city limits. So right now, property owners over here are within our sphere, but they're not within our city limits.
Right.
And so they're Sutter County residents. They're not Yuba City residents. And so all of the costs and everything associated that they're dealing with is county. What we're talking about doing tonight is exploring the possibility of expanding this green line down to here. It doesn't mean that they're in the city. It doesn't mean that development's happening next year or not. What has to happen is a whole bunch of studies, as I said, and then the next step, much like over here, is you would have to go through the annexation process. And that's when certainly the property owners have a direct vote and cause and effect in whether or not they're annexed into the city limits. And so once we start getting to that level of talking about annexation, then of course we'll have those costs, hard cost figures for what is going to be, by a case-by-case basis.
Well, and I think that was the biggest concern, is that this is something that this action would cost them money. And the reality is that this action won't cost them anything at this point.
No.
And even in the future, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to make those choices. As you mentioned, if this was adopted to expand the sphere of influence tonight, that's all it does. It doesn't annex these properties into the city. That's a totally separate process.
It actually doesn't even expand the sphere tonight. All it simply does is gives us direction so that as we go out and start exploring the technical studies, because as part of this effort, we have to go report to LAFCO.
Right.
And LAFCO is going to require what's called a municipal services review, which basically says wherever your boundary line is, you're able to serve.
Right.
Makes sense. They want to make sure that you can adequately serve your sphere. And so we need to have some kind of line so that everybody knows where we're serving. And so all we're doing tonight is saying, as part of your process, we're recommending that the line be drawn here. And there was no playing with the results here. What this happened that evening, and then also based on the response from the surveys that were mailed out. And so you can see that the majority, the overwhelming majority of those who did not favor an expansion to the sphere were south of Stewart. And so realistically, as you look at, a variety of different things, you look at the county's general plan land use, it's primarily ag down here. And then you also get into other factors about environmental concerns and those kinds of things. Stewart represents a logical boundary line for studying. Again, it's not happening tonight. We're studying it.
Can you go back to the current city boundaries and the sphere of influence? This one along the right side there, along the Feather River, there's a portion that is county. Is it possible to? I see the sphere of influence. I guess that it goes out to the center of the river. Is that correct? Currently,
Correct.
All right, so maybe this is premature, but I would think that at some point in the future, if we're looking at annex those, that we look at adding that property because of some of the issues that it creates for law enforcement with the vagrants and homeless people that live down in the river bottoms. Currently, that is policed by the county. It makes it awkward for doing that, and then going up even to the Sutter County Airport, which is still in the county, but that has been handed over to a private group. So if we're looking at that, I would like to include those areas in this study too, if that's possible.
Well, because these areas are already in our sphere, they're already
Okay.
addressed by our current municipal service review, which we have to do every 5 years. So what the next logical step for that area over here that you're referencing, as well as all these other areas that we've identified as future master plans or specific plans, for example, like the Leakin East over here, the thought process there with our 12 growth policies is that as these plans are ready to develop, they'll come in and do their own individual annexations. And that way we're ensuring that we're not jeopardizing the vote for that particular plan area with another plan area. So we can certainly, if it's the council's desire, explore doing this area, but it would be my recommendation that we do that individually, separate from this, because of all the different issues and the municipal services review that is needed for that area south of Bogue.
All right.
Okay.
That's all I have at this point.
Any other questions for Mr. Bush?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I was just going to offer if it's a desire of the council, Mr. Teague, Mr. Teague, he raised points. I don't know to the degree we can answer those, but he does provide us the opportunity to sit down with someone, and maybe Mr. Bush and I can take some time of his, if he has time available in the next week or two, to better understand what his issues are. So as we continue the process in the future, we can, to Councilman Dukes' point, better refine a product to put out and answer the questions of the public. So,
Is it okay with you, Mr. Teague?
But I would also like to add that I don't think the information, and I think that would sway a lot of people's votes. I agree, you did the math, strong agree, but I, for one, didn't vote. I didn't vote because, like I said at the meeting, I chose not to vote. Had 3 or 4 letters sent to me. At no point was this development ever mentioned. And he says, well, there's no details of the development. The packet that you have is a January letter that is project development, and it says within 1 month we're going to give you a master plan. I'd like to know what's going next over.
Right.
I think everybody else in that area would like to know that too. And what I'm saying is, I don't think anybody knows. I went and talked to my neighbors this morning, they didn't know.
Right.
I think that influences the vote.
Totally. No.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Having been on the planning commission and chairing it for several years, it's a long, slow process to get to the point where they have some hard numbers and can give you some actual concrete things to where there can be a vote. There's not going to be any vote until at such time as the annexation, at such time as they move farther on. So we're in the process of developing all this at this point, and it's going to take some time. So there are no specifics necessarily. other than what Newcomb Ranch is planning as far as the retail or housing or whatever. But I think that would be an excellent point for you to get together with Steve and Aaron to go over some details there. And you might be able to help us disseminate that information to the other people who are concerned. As the process goes on, there'll be more meetings too. So,
And I think like Aaron said, this is just the beginning step of it, and it just begins the studies and fact finding and all that good stuff. I don't think anything's defined yet. What's going in as far as commercial? How many houses? What density housing is going in? So this is just the first step of many, many steps to come. So with that, if there's not any other questions from the council, what's the pleasure?
I would move the recommendation to proceed with the next steps.
Okay. Got a motion by Councilmember Starkey. Got a second. And all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bush.